Okay, we've already seen two coaches can this year. Unexpected in Chicago, somewhat. Um, we had heard rumors at the end of last season. Apparently, those were true. That Chicago really felt they needed to move on from Quenneville. Now they have. So, which coach is next? So, I've gone through and tried to find some way of trying to figure out who's most likely next to walk the plank. Randy Carlisle in Anaheim. He's in year 3. They were swept in the first round last spring. They're off to a 7-7-3 start. They were expected to be contenders, and that matters. Where your team is expected to be and where they're actually at, I think matters as to whether or not you're going to lose your job. For instance, Quenneville was coaching a team in Chicago that I think management, Stan Bowman, feels that they should be better than what they are. So that's part of the reason why Quenneville's out in a broken locker room as well, which can lead to a lot of losses in a row. Now, there's been a lot of losses in a row for Anaheim. They pulled out of that with a win over Calgary, but let's keep in mind they have an incredible record at home against Calgary. There's some kind of mental block with Calgary, or they just suck in Anaheim, or something. But anyways, yeah, and I didn't jinx it by wearing a Flames jersey yesterday because I haven't worn a Flames jersey the previous 35 times they've been in Anaheim, and I think they've lost about that many in a row. But they're allowing too many shots, and to me that does mean that it could potentially be something on the coaching side. Getzlaf's missed 6 games, so that's a key guy who's been missing. And when he's out, it makes a big difference to the team. They're taking 25.5 shots per game. They're allowing 36.5 shots per game. Their power play is an anemic 14.6%. Their penalty kill is 78.9%. So they're not shooting enough. They're allowing too many shots. Their power play isn't very good, and their penalty kill isn't very good. So special teams have been an issue, and their goaltending has really saved them and helped them get that 7-7-3 record. Currently on the injured list, Comtois, Cache, Perry, and Ritchie. And those are all key injuries. Perry and Cache especially being projected top 6 forwards. Cache, even if Cache ends up on the third line, he can score 20 goals. He can be a solid player for them. So this could very well save the job of Randy Carlisle for now, that they can look and say, you know what, we're missing a bunch of guys. We're shorthanded. That might explain the power play without Perry and Kasha. That might explain the shot differential as well. May very well save them. Columbus, these guys. And Columbus, and I'm intentionally wearing their first year jersey because Columbus has had a spotted history when it comes to not just coaches, but sustained success, right? So we're looking for sustained success. Tortorella's in year 4. His third full year as coach, his 4th year overall. They lost in round 1, of course, to the Washington Capitals. The series, they looked like they were going to win halfway through game 3 of that series, and then it just fell apart for them. Or if you're a Caps fan, that's when the Caps started playing well. The expectation for them is playoffs. I don't think anybody looks at Columbus and sees them as necessarily a contender, but playoffs is an expectation. They have poor goalie numbers. That's the biggest standout with them, is that we have not seen a Sergei Bobrovsky so far this year that we saw last year and the year before, and that does make a big difference. Seth Jones missed 7 games early in the season, so you can look at that as part of the reason why maybe they haven't been as good. But the problem with that, of course, is he's been back for a while, and they're still wildly inconsistent from game to game. Riley Nash stands out as a guy who's got off to a slow start. He's played 15 games. He has 2 assists. I didn't find a guy with Anaheim that I felt had a slow start. They're allowing 3.5 goals against per game. That goes back on the goaltending. But their power play is at 11.9%. This is the second year where their power play has been abysmal. And that has to change, and that does speak to coaching. Their penalty kill at 75.5% is underachieving as well. So that is definitely an issue for the Columbus Blue Jackets. You look at the overall numbers, I don't know that Tortorella's necessarily on any kind of watch list. So if there's a watch list of which coaches might get fired, other than me having him on the board here, I don't know of any chance that he necessarily would lose his job, unless Columbus goes into a major swan dive. And then the issue then becomes, who do you replace John Tortorella with? because Tortorella's had some pretty solid success with Columbus. I honestly think he's safer than Carlisle. So between the two, I would say Carlisle would be the one most in danger of losing his job. So let's move on to Detroit, and we'll continue to compare back. Blashill's in his fourth year. Of course, they missed the playoffs last year. They're 5-8-2 currently, and the expectation is rebuild. The expectation is that they may very well want Jack Hughes. And honestly, of all the teams in the league, I would say the Detroit Red Wings and the New York Rangers are the teams that would most benefit from adding Jack Hughes to their rosters. They have a lack of scoring. Absolutely. Their defense hasn't been great either, but the lack of scoring is what stands out the most with them. Cholowski missed 2 games. That's their key guy who's been missing. And Cholowski, for people who haven't been watching Detroit, he's an excellent defenseman. And I think by the end of the year, he'll get more Calder conversations than he's getting right now. Of course, it's all about Pettersson. Pettersson's off to the hot start. May very well be Pettersson wire to wire. But Cholowski, I think, is going to get into that conversation for everybody. I know he's there for some now. I think he'll be in the conversation for everybody. Slow starter, Anthony Mantha. I've talked about him before. 15 games, 3 goals, 2 assists, minus 13. So while plus minus is not an accurate indicator for certain players, when you're a minus 13 in 15 games, that says you haven't been playing well defensively. They're scoring 2.6 goals per game. They're allowing 3.6 goals per game. That can be traced back to coaching, or it can be traced back to the fact that it is a rebuild. Athanasiou, Nielsen, and Vanek are on the list currently of guys who are missing and uncertain as to when they're coming back, or maybe they'll be back next game kind of thing for, I think Athanasiou might be back next game. Anyways, so some interesting injury issues, especially when you compare them to Columbus that hasn't really had any that we know of, right? There may be some guys playing hurt, but there was nobody on the Columbus list. So where does Blashill fit in? This is where Detroit fans get upset. I don't think Blashill's job is necessarily in danger because I don't think Detroit expected to be a playoff team. I think this was expected to be a wasted year. I think Blashill could very well be out of a job at the end of the year if they decide, especially if they win the draft lottery and they decide to try to pull a Toronto where, they draft Jack Hughes and then they're going to reinvent themselves in the offseason. That's where Blashill may very well find himself out of work. But I think he's safe for this year. I would say he's safer than Tortorella, and thus Carlisle's still the one on the clock. Ottawa, Guy Boucher, this is year 3 for him. They missed the playoffs last year. They are 6-6-3. And I will say this for Guy Boucher. I think he gets overrated as a coach, but I also think that he gets criticized a lot unfairly. I kind of think there's both. I put him as kind of a middle-of-the-road coach. I don't think he hurts your team. I don't think he's a huge help either. I think he's just one of those coaches that, if they succeed, he's going to get a lot of praise, and when they don't, he's going to get a lot of the blame for it. That's kind of standard with coaches, isn't it? But the expectation in Ottawa this year's rebuild. They said rebuild. Eugene Melnick said, yeah, we're a dumpster fire. Come support us. Brilliant ownership all the way. But the expectation is it's a rebuild. So that makes things easier on Boucher this year. But they've had some poor defensive numbers. Their offense has been surprisingly solid. Their goaltending, I know Anderson's numbers, the .909 save percentage may scare some people off on fantasy for him, and that's agreed upon. But really, Anderson hasn't been the problem. He has faced a ton of shots, and I don't know any goalie in the league that could necessarily do better than he's done. Maybe Rene, I guess. But even Rene behind this defense, I think he'd be like, no. Smith has missed 6 games so far. Zach Smith, of course, at the start of the season was waived. And it was unexpected that he would have a good start, and then he did, and then he got hurt. So we haven't heard when he's going to be back yet. Tom Pyatt's played 15 games for Ottawa. He has 0 points in those games. He is a -10. That, to me, qualifies as a slow start, even though you don't expect Pyatt to get a lot of minutes or get a lot of points. Those underlying numbers just haven't been great for him. Tkachuk is returning tonight to tonight's game against Vegas after missing 11 games. And in those 11 games, the difference without Tkachuk is there. And Brady Tkachuk is a guy who, we talked about Cholowski, let's talk about Tkachuk. Brady Tkachuk's a guy who, if he can stay healthy the rest of the way, is going to give Elias Pettersson a run for his money in terms of who guys are talking about. He had a ton of points in those 4 games he played, and then he got hurt. So Tonight with him back, if he's 100% healthy, that's going to help. It won't help the goals against. They're allowing 4.1 goals against per game. Their penalty kill is now at 79.0%. So it got better the last game. It was at 69.1, and so it got better by 0.9%. But after everything coming out of Ubergate, we're going to see. I think we're going to see an Ottawa team that's better. That being said, look, you got Gaborik, who's been out. Pajot's been out. Smith's been out. And Ryan I've got with a question mark because he's supposed to return tonight, but he was out the last game, and it seems like one of those that might be a nagging thing. So we'll see where Ryan is after tonight and how much he plays and that kind of thing. But there have been injury issues with Ottawa. Pajot's a glue guy. Smith being out hurts their offense. And Gaborik may not be anywhere near what Gaborik was, but he's still capable of playing top 9. He's still capable of scoring 25, 35 points a year. And it's not a substantial injury, but it's still noteworthy. So, all that being said, I don't see Boucher's job being in any danger. I would say his job is more in danger than Blashill's, just because of what may come out of the Ubergate, right? If there's a lack of respect for the coaches from the team, and if management says, you know what, we've got to fix that part of the culture too, he may find himself in trouble. But while I find him more in danger than Blashill, Tortorella's a 4-game losing streak away from, I think, being in real danger, so I would make Boucher's job safer than Tortorella's, which means Carlisle is still on the clock, in my eyes. Hackstall. If you ask Flyers fans right now, they're kind of tired of Hackstall. Here's the thing. The Flyers went through a 10-game losing streak last year, and they didn't fire him. I don't see any reason to think they will this year either. It's year 4. They lost, of course, in round 1 last year to the Pittsburgh Penguins. They're currently 7-7-1 thanks to a very, very productive road trip, which has helped Hackstall's job. The expectations playoffs. Nobody sees the Flyers and goes, oh, they're going to be a contender. The poor goalie numbers that have held things back, I think we could kind of see that coming. It's not a huge surprise that Philly's having struggles in goal, and I know Flyers fans get upset that this is an ongoing thing, but it is. Now, James Van Riemsdyk's been missing for 13 games so far, and that hurts their attack. And their 3.7 goals against per game, I don't think gets helped if JVR plays those games, but their 15.7% penalty kill, or power play would be better. Their 69% penalty kill, I don't know, JVR being in the lineup helps that, but their power play would likely be better. And so Raffl and Van Riemsdyk are on the list of guys that are missing, that are noteworthy. Raffl is a support guy, but again, the Flyers are not a team with a ton of experience depth. And I almost put on the board for slow starters that Vorobiev didn't get off to the start that was expected after his preseason. But he's a rookie, so I'm not going to put him on the board for having a slow start. And finally, that brings us to, I guess I should say where I think Hackstall ranks and things. Hackstall's job, I think, is more perilous than everybody except Carlisle and probably Tortorella. And of course, with Tortorella, I said if he gets on a major losing streak. Hackstall, it's interesting because last year, of course, Ron Hextall came out and said he wasn't firing him. I've seen nothing this year to tell me that Hackstall's job's in danger. So, yeah, I would still have Carlisle on the clock. Hackstall, yeah, I'd put him behind Tortorella. And again, Boucher and Blashill may get a pass because of the rebuild. Boucher, of course, getting that asterisk to do the players respect him. That's a big thing. So we'll see, but I would say Hackstall. And again, I'm going on the word of Ron Hextall with this one, which is tough because how many times have we seen a general manager come out and say, nah, that guy's job is safe, and then 3 weeks later, yeah, it turns out I talked to the owner and he said either it's him or it's you, and I figure it's better if it's him. So, yeah, so he's out. There you go, he's done. I wasn't going to fire him, but when I heard it was either him or me, then, yeah, sorry, buddy. We can still hang out at Christmas, but you're out of work. So there you go. And Yo, I'm going to say right up front, I still think, despite the fact St. Louis is starting to show signs of life, Mike Yeo is the one that I think is most likely to go. It's been pointed out that for anybody to get Joel Quenneville, Chicago would have to agree to it. Right. St. Louis is a division rival. They wouldn't want him to go to St. Louis. Agreed. But While it's unlikely that St. Louis and Quenneville come back together all these years later, it is an intriguing prospect, and I would think that if Quenneville and Doug Armstrong wanted to talk, I would think Chicago would allow it. After the 3 Stanley Cups that Quenneville helped Chicago win, there will be people who over the next couple of years try to revise history and say that, well, it wasn't really Quenneville's coaching that got him there. It was these other factors, and it was the fact that he had these superstar players. You'll always see that. Scotty Bowman, for years, I heard how he wasn't really the greatest coach. He just always had really good teams. The fact those two things went together had nothing to do with it. But Mike Yeo's job is definitely in danger. And he said it himself publicly a couple weeks ago. Ironically, I think by coming out and saying, yeah, my job should be on the line, I think having the guts to say that might give a boss reason to pause and say, maybe I'll give him some time. He admits things aren't going well. He's in year 3. They missed the playoffs last year, which makes it worse because they were supposed to make the playoffs last year. They're 5-5-3. The expectation this year is kind of that they would be contenders, that they would be right there with Nashville and Winnipeg, that with the additions they got in the offseason, Ryan O'Reilly especially, that this was now a team that couldn't just make the playoffs. After missing them on the 82nd game last year, this was a team that was not happy with just making the playoffs. They were trying to make some serious moves so they could be contenders. And it really hasn't worked. And because he's the guy behind the bench with all these new faces on the ice, it is definitely going to be on him that things aren't working, and they're wildly inconsistent. This isn't just about goaltending. There's a wild inconsistency all over. Though the goaltending numbers are bad. An .879 save percentage from your starter is not good enough. When you've got a goaltender who, as Jake Allen has been said about before, that he's got, he needs to be in the right headspace. If he's not in the right headspace, you have to have a staff in place that are able to get him back to where he needs to be. So Jake Allen's struggles may very well come back and bite not only Mike Yeo, but your goaltending coach and other coaches on the team as well. This might be a house cleaning of sorts if it comes to a head. Because that 5-5-3 record isn't solid enough to maintain your job with any hope of getting an extension on your contract or anything. Not going to happen. Fabry was missed the first 10 games, or missed 10 games this year. Not the first 10 games. He missed 10 games this year. Of course, he has a goal and an assist now, and Fabry's a feel-good story, and Fabry may very well be a guy who gets a nice Christmas basket from Mike Yeo if he can help the Blues move and get better. But really, it's going to come down to Jake Allen. It's going to come down to that goaltending. And Schwartz, Jaden Schwartz, in 11 games this year has 1 goal and 3 assists. That is a shocking start. And I understand Schwartz may not be playing healthy. I understand this might be a nagging injury thing. It certainly has the looks of it from the stats. But Schwartz was a major spark plug for this team last year. When he was hurt, it dragged them down. And now he doesn't look like that same player this year. They have a 3.7 goals against per game. It's not good enough. You're not going to make the playoffs with a goals against a 3.7 a game. Sorry, Philly. You're in the same boat. And Ottawa with a 4.1, that's just not going to work. Goals against come down during the season anyways. It's a natural progression. But that's a very striking stat from a team that we said going into the season they needed a strong season from Jake Allen. On the injured list, Braden Shen missed the last game. It's day-to-day with him right now. And Bouwmeester and Bertuzzo. Now, St. Louis fans are going to say, and rightfully so, Bouwmeester has not been very good for them for the last couple of years. Absolutely, 100% agree. Don't have a problem with that assertion. Bortuzzo, though, has been a solid defenseman, and you're going to miss him back there. And maybe that's part of the reason why there's prime shots getting in on Allen and Johnson, and their save percentages have both been abysmal. But, again, the goaltending needs to step up. So if I have to make, an opinion known on this, Yo's number 1, Carlisle's number 2. But again, you guys let me know in the comment section below which one of these 6 goaltenders. I'm so used to doing goalie videos. I'm like, all right, here's going to be a goalie video. 6 coaches. Which one of these 6 coaches do you think is going to walk the plank next? Or is there somebody who's not on the board that you think is most likely to go next? I did not touch coaches of teams that are expected to be rebuilders where the coach is only in his first or second season. So I didn't talk about Bugner. I didn't talk about Housley because, again, I don't think the expectation is that either of them will find themselves in trouble anytime soon. Even if Buffalo goes on a huge slide, I don't think Housley's in trouble. And for Bugner, I think he'll get at least a full season this year to right the ship. I don't think there's a ton of pressure on Florida to make things better. And Carolina, again, brand new coach. I don't expect any kind of pressure on him in year one. But we'll see. Crazier things have happened. So let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.